War is inevitable. And right now it seems like it's everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but you hear it everywhere in the news, right? You hear it with Israel and Lebanon, you hear it with Ukraine and Russia. And I think there's the two sides, right? The two sides split, the sides. Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, etc. One side takes Ukraine, one side takes Russia, one side takes Israel, one side takes Lebanon. And I had a conversation today that really struck me. Like really, like I was honestly in tears. Yeah, I wasn't. I wouldn't say I was crying for sure, but there were tears in my eyes because it was tragic. I work with a woman who has a son who lives in Ukraine. So the woman comes obviously from Ukraine. She is here in Germany in Reitenwinkel, a tiny, tiny little town, as a not an immigrant, but a trying to think of the English word, Asylanten in German, a someone fleeing war, asylum seeker, I suppose. And I've worked with her now for 2.5 years. I know her well. I like her, not always, but generally, she's a good woman. You know, she does her best. She works hard. She sends a lot of her money back to Ukraine, and it's always kind of struck me that I've asked her several times in the last years, "Why are you here? What are you doing? What why not go back to Ukraine?" And she said that, she's here because she can make more money and she can help out. And she told me one time, I don't remember the numbers, but she sends back a good portion of her paycheck to Ukraine, to the military, to be able to defend their country. And today she told me in tears, I mean, very much in tears, really crying, tragic. Truly, I was having a hard time keeping it straight myself. That her son, she has one son, I believe, her son, and he has two small children. He is now as a lieutenant. So I had to say real quickly. So she is Ukrainian. I'm English. I'm American. Obviously, we speak in German. My German is a bit better than hers, so we do our best to communicate in German. But I'm trying to figure out. I saw today that she was, you know, struggling. She was having a hard time keeping, it's I don't know, a straight face. Keeping, I could tell she was upset. And I asked her, is everything okay? Are you okay? What's wrong? Because we've worked together for 2.5 years. So I want to know. I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not this great, amazing empath. But after a few years, you know pretty well when someone is not doing okay. And I asked her, and she said, no, at first she said, yeah, I'm fine. But then she told me, she said, yeah, no, okay, I'm not okay. My son is a lieutenant in the Ukrainian military. He's been selected. So I think he's been called up, I suppose, drafted, if you want to call it that. And I asked her, okay, okay, yeah, okay, that's tough, of course. When you're at war and your son is called up to the military, that's hard. That's scary, of course. And she told me a little bit again in broken German that he is a lieutenant. And she told me that as a mother, it was hard for her to understand. It was heartbreaking. So she said that her son, she understood why he was doing it, but it hurt her heart. And she showed me a text in Ukrainian that she had translated into German, where the son had told her why, and the son told her that many Ukrainian men had left their country because of war. They'd gone to Germany or somewhere in Europe because they saw what was coming. They saw that Russia was invading or whatever. And her son said, and this was straight from her, that he couldn't look his little boy in the eye if he didn't stay to defend his country. Blah, it brings tears to my eyes now. I mean, really, and and this is what blows me away, that I am no big, huge fan of Ukraine. I'm not. Of their leadership, Zelensky, give me a break. One of the most corrupt countries in the last 20 years, maybe 50. So I'm not a fan of their government, for goodness sake. I'm not a fan of their war with Russia on either side. I'm not. I'm not a fan of Russia. I'm not a fan of Ukraine. I, as an American living in Germany, I'm just like, just figure it out. But speaking with a mother of a man in Ukraine who has to now go to war and maybe be killed, but he chose it. He could have left. He could have come here to our little town of Reitenwinkel. He could have come to Germany. And he said, no, I'm going to stay for my country. I'm going to fight for my country. I'm going to maybe die for my country, despite having a small child and a mother in Germany who worries about me and would be devastated if I die. I'm going to stay for my country. And this is the point. 2 points. First of all, war is terrible. All war. We look at Israel and Lebanon and Israel and Hamas and Ukraine and Russia. Whatever war, it's evil. Why do you think? I mean, I can tell you in our rosary, and I think many of you probably also say in the beginning when we pray for our petitions, we pray for world peace. We pray to Our Lady for world peace because war is awful. It's evil. It's terrible. It's destructive. It kills not just men who are, called up to the military, but the innocents as well. We've seen that now in the Middle East. We see it in Ukraine. It's terrible. So the first message, obviously, is we need to pray for peace. And I don't think that's not something I need to preach. It's pretty obvious. And I think all Catholics know that. Peace, war is almost always unjust. It's almost it is always terrible. The effects of war have always a terrible recompense. You pay for it with lives of innocents. You see it now again in Middle East and Ukraine. Children die, innocents die. This young man who's standing for his country and being a patriot, maybe he'll die. I don't even know his name. I don't. I don't know her last name. I've worked with her for years and I know her first name and I know that her son is going to war in Ukraine. How much of a tragedy is that? He might die. He might die in a war with Russia. Why? Why? For territory? And it's throughout all history, throughout all mankind's history, there's been war. And so very rarely is it just. We hope to have a podcast with Father McKenna about just war, quote unquote. The morality of war. It's rarely so. It's rarely moral. Because you have innocents dying. And not just innocents, not just children and women, but also these men who they don't want to go to war. This guy, I know for sure, you want to know what his job is? He cuts hair for a living. He's a stylist, you know? And how is that that a stylist, guy who cuts hair for a living or a barber, whatever you want to call him, has to go to war and fight against a country so much bigger than yours? It's ridiculous. Why? Why are we doing this? And I think that was my main point of this podcast is when we talk about these things, when we talk about Lebanon and Israel and Ukraine and Russia, we got to be not so glib. And speaking totally for myself as well. So, Russia and Ukraine, people are dying. It's tragic. Russians too. Why are we doing this? Stop. We're doing this because we don't have Christ as our king. If Christ was truly the king of the world, we wouldn't have war. We wouldn't have the battle of Ukraine and Russia, Germany and Russia, or Britain and Russia. We have to enshrine Christ as our king. And if we do that as a world, as a society of the Western world, it won't happen anymore. And I just think it's something we need to consider that these things that we just again, we, speaking of myself, oh, there's war in Ukraine and Russia. And I think that the Russia is not really the bad guy because Ukraine, blah blah blah. The NATO has, blah 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 blah. There are real people dying. People. Same in Israel, Lebanon, Hamas, etc. Palestine, whatever. And as Catholics, I think that the biggest thing we have to do is, first of all, pray. Pray, pray, pray for world peace. And secondly, be really careful when we talk about these things, when we discuss war. Oh, I like Putin because, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay. I don't think Putin's the big bad, mm, horrible James Bond villain that everyone wants him to be. But, he did invade, right? And so a good Ukrainian man who said that that so many men are fleeing, I'm going to stay because I don't want my son to think ill of me as a Ukrainian. How big is that? That's the thing. How many Americans would if we really came to war, let's say with whoever, China, Russia, whoever, and they're actually in our country invading us, how many people would flee? How many people would just run away because they don't want to deal with it? How many people would close their eyes and say, "Fine, I'm a Russian. I'm a Russian. I'm a Russian." Do you love your country? Would you fight for your country? And again, when that comes to that, it's not even about the morality of the war. If you're being invaded, would you fight for it? Are you a patriot? Do you love your country? And so many people don't. So many Catholics don't. Man, I live in Germany. I've been here for 8.5 years. I love America. I do. And Germany, in Bavaria. And I hope I tell myself I would die for both. Bavaria, maybe not Germany, I don't know. Bavaria, the Catholic Bavaria, and the moral America. I know it doesn't exist. Do you think I don't understand what's going on with Kamala and Trump? It's not good. It's not a good situation. Is America this moral high ground of perfection? No. Not even close. Of course it's not. I don't think that. But I do think that we need to love it. We need to love it for what it could be. We need to fight for it. This man in Ukraine is fighting for his country, maybe not because he loves what it is. I don't know. I haven't talked to him, but he loves what it should be. And he will die for it. Would we do that? Would we? Would you and I die for our country? For our freedoms? For America? For Bavaria? It's a big question. And if we're not willing to, I would really consider that. Really think about it. You're not dying for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump or Zelensky or Putin. You're dying for what your country should be. You're fighting for the freedoms of what you think your country should be. You're giving your children an example of what should happen. If you truly believe you're being invaded by another country, should you flee? And again, everyone knows, I think, on this podcast, I'm not a big Ukrainian fan. But if Germany got invaded by Russia and I was just like, fine. If America got invaded by China or Russia or whoever, do we just turn our cheek? Do we just say, "Yeah, okay, go ahead, take us over"? Maybe. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not saying you have to go and join the army, but we certainly better consider it. We have to care. And I just think we're too nonchalant about war because it doesn't affect us. It's far away. Israel and Lebanon. Yeah, Israel bombed Lebanon. Who cares? Yeah, Ukraine invaded Russia with who knows what. Why? Who I don't know. And now young men and women will die because of war. And I think we need to really consider why. Why? And how do we fix it? How do we change it? As Catholics, first of all, no question. Pray the rosary. Pray to Our Lady for world peace. Pray, pray, pray. And I do myself, personally, me, Kevin Davis, believe vote for a president, Congress, Senate that you believe is the most likely to bring us out of war. You look it up yourselves. I think that's very clear as proven by evidence of their own leadership who will more likely bring us out of war. I'll let you decide that for yourselves. Anyway, I'm done with my rant. But please, I really sincerely pray for these men in Ukraine, in Israel, in Lebanon, in Russia, women too, of course, who are dying for their countries. Pray for peace. Pray that they save their souls. Pray that we save our souls. And pray that somehow, through God's grace, we end up in a world that doesn't do this ridiculous search for power and domination. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff. Till next time, I'm Kevin.